they're jamming the city, and you're lucky to have that. And a lot of their military convoys do have that, but the vast majority of the vehicles don't do that. There is I think I could say this. There is an app that's used throughout that people can. That gives you a warning because they're detecting drones, and then they can send a signal out to cars, to civilians, who will then get the alert. There's a drone in your area, because the drone attack that we had, the civilian vehicles were driving right off the road. The people were running out of their vehicles and taking shelter. The military, scanning around looking for the targets. The military, I'm sure, had in the front of the vehicle, they had the same jammer system, but the civilians don't have that. So civilians are getting their alerts, separately. But
here's my question that I wanted to ask you. Let's suppose, and boy, I hope this happens for the sake of both sides, because I don't think the Ukrainian people are getting anything out of this war. What's left in Donetsk, 10, 15%? Let's suppose that the Russians get that 10 or 15% in the next month or two or whenever. Whatever's left in Zaporizhia, what is it, 10, 15% also, or something like that, maybe 20%. They finished that as well. So now they got Luhansk, and they got Zaporizhia, and they got Donetsk, and they basically got the 4 oblasts, and they finally, obviously they already have Crimea. How does that change what we're seeing now? Because in essence, that would mean that the Ukrainian military on the ground would have been defeated, but this mamby-pamby crap with these drones could still continue for how long? And is that what the theater would look like for the next year, 2, whatever? Scott?
They're first of all, the mass number of drones aren't going to be fired by stay-behind forces or things like that. I'll give you an example. When I went to Starobilsk, there was 2 drones hit within a block and a half of where we were. First, the Russians said, don't worry about it, that's outgoing. I'm like, I don't know, been around a little bit. Didn't sound like outgoing to me, but I'll believe it. And then they came and said, no, we got to get the hell out of Dodge. The Ukrainians have this derogatory term they use for the Russians that stay, that refuse to be evacuated. They stay in the villages. They call them the zhdun, the waiters. They're mainly older people, but they're waiting for the Russians to liberate them. But the Ukrainians have their own zhdun, people who stay behind, got Russian citizenship, because the Russians bent over backwards to give citizenship to people of Lugansk, and then they wait, and the Ukrainians give them drones. And the thinking was that the zhdun, because my trip to the Donbass was kept secret. We didn't broadcast it at all to anybody, and yet there was a feeling that they knew I was there because people saw that I was there, and they phoned in. And these drones weren't coming in from abroad. These are drones that are being launched locally. And this is a problem. In Lugansk right now, a lot of gas stations, a lot of things are being struck. They can only be done with insider knowledge, because the Russians are doing.
So it would diminish expansively.
The scope and scale will drop tremendously. First of all, the Ukrainians right now, when they recruit, they're having a hard time recruiting infantry for obvious reasons, because they're all dying. Plus, it takes a long time to train good infantry. 6-month basic training before you can send them to the front. Now they're getting 2 weeks of whatever, knock on the head, 2 weeks, and then you're sent to the front to die. Basically, just to buy time. Your job is to buy time while they try to come up with something. But they are recruiting extensively drone operators, 80,000 of them in the last year. And these are the guys that are out there launching these drones, and they have a whole bunch of drones to launch. But the Russians have become very good at doing what we call pattern of life activity, meaning, there are certain things that you have to do to launch a drone. It just doesn't happen by magic. There are preparations that have to be done. So you're looking for patterns of life, and the Russians have their own drones overhead. And when they find a pattern of life, when the Ukrainians make a mistake, they kill them. And the deadliest job for the Ukrainians right now is a drone operator. They're being slaughtered. And they will continue to flood the zone with these guys while they can hold this last urban belt of Slavyansk, Kramatorsk, and the one city's about to fall, whose name I can't remember. But when this breaks, and the Russians push through and take all of Donetsk, the Ukrainian army is going to break as well. And these drone operators will stop operating drones because they'll all be dead. Rubicon, which is the Rubicon center part of the Russian Ministry of Defense, these Rubicon units are the best drone hunters in the world. And if Rubicon gets in your sector and you're operating a drone, you're going to die. It's about 100% certainty that you're going to die. And this is what's happening. So as Russia wins this war, you're going to see a huge diminishment in tactical drones. And once that happens, now the Russian mechanized units now have more freedom to operate, and they'll do deeper penetrations, and the war will change. Drones.
Yeah, there'll always be terrorist attacks. I imagine we can't
terrorist
stop
attacks
that
are going to be there. There will be, but again, these things. Look, a lot of people need to reread Russian history and see what the Russians did from 1948 to 1954, 55. The defeat of the Banderist and Melnik, the organization Ukrainian Nationalism. Huge fights being fought in Ukraine. Huge fight. The Nazis. And the Russians defeated them, hunted them down in the villages, and eradicated them totally. They were all gone. Hundreds of thousands were killed. Hundreds of thousands fled. Hundreds of thousands were sent to the Gulag. But then Nikita Khrushchev decided to, blame Stalin for everything, and he called the Banderas political prisoners. So instead of rotting in the Gulag, he freed them in 1956, 57, and they came back and re-insinuated themselves into Ukrainian society. The Russians know what needs to be done, and the Russians will do this. They've done it, for instance, in Zaporizhia, there was a huge Zdun problem. And the Russian FSB went in there, and there isn't a huge Zdun problem right now. You can put two and two together, but the point is, if you're somebody out there supporting the Ukrainians, you will be found out and you will be brought to justice, and that justice will probably be life terminating.
Let's thank God that Putin doesn't drink the way Khrushchev did, and we'll leave that alone, or we'll get in trouble by Russian historians. Final question. You are very connected, as much as anybody I know, with a lot of the people who know really what's going on the front line. Stas is really good with this kind of stuff too. What is the outlook right now? What does the latest intel tell us about what is actually happening on the front lines? The West is telling us that Ukraine is winning the war. Is there anything even remotely true about that statement, or is it completely the opposite?
Ukraine's not winning the war, but they're putting up a hell of a fight. And there's not a single Russian that I spoke to there who's engaged in the fighting who had anything other than words of not admiration, but they recognize a tough enemy when they see it. And the Ukrainians are putting up a hell of a fight. The drone operators, I spent a lot of time with Russian drone operators, and they say the Ukrainians are very, very good. In many cases, they're better than the Russians. So they have better technology. The West is flooding billions of dollars of technology. Technology means a lot in the drone game. The Russians are playing continuously. Now the Russians will catch up. Very innovative guys, and they eventually find a solution. But then the Ukrainians flood it again. This makes for a very, very hard fight, and sadly, it's a very bloody fight. This drone to advance through the gray zone where FPV drones are. If you do it wrong, you die. Literally, you die. You're going to die. And so a lot of Russians are dying. People need to understand that this is not a bloodless fight. This is a very hard fight. But Russia's winning this fight decisively across the front, and the Ukrainians can't sustain this fight. This war is going to end in Russia's favor. And the other thing is that Russia, even though this is a hard fight and they're taking casualties and all this, this isn't the kind of casualties where you say, oh my God, I have to mobilize 500,000 men to bring them in. Russia has this under control. The casualties they're taking are not sufficient enough to disrupt the plan that Putin has in place. This is why there's no panic in the Kremlin. People say, oh, he's weak. He says, no, he's the smartest dude out there right now. He has a grasp of everything. At the St. Petersburg International Forum, his plenary speech was all about the economy, because he's not going to let this war define his strategic objectives for Russia, which is to build a Russia that exists successfully after the war is done. But then he turned to the soldiers. He gave them their orders, Robote and Barat, keep fighting, brothers, keep working. He knows what needs to be done, and it's being done. The Russians do have a problem with information warfare. They're their own worst propagandists. They have things that they could do better to tell this story. They're not good at it. The Ukrainians are being advised by two of the intelligence services that have the best information operation programs out there, the United States and the British. And so this is why we get what we get in mainstream media, in the blogosphere and social media, this narration of Ukrainian victory, Russian defeat. But the truth is, and I'm here to just tell you, I spent 10 days in the Donbass. I know it's not a lifetime, but it's more than just, zipping in and out. And the truth is, I've never seen a region with better morale. I was expecting something, because I'll tell you, Melitopol, no electricity, no water, and gasoline was very hard to find. Let's just be honest about that. I was supposed to go to Kherson, couldn't. The road was too dangerous. But instead of people saying we surrender, we quit, we want to, they're like, no, we got this. Don't worry about it. We got this. Kids are going to school. After Star of Bells, you'd think the kids would be afraid to go to school. The universities are full of students who are going to school. You'd think after the bus got hit and the kid died, the people say, I'm not getting on the bus. They are living their lives and they will not be intimidated by this, what's going on. They know, because the Donbass was an area of huge struggle during the Great Patriotic War, World War II. They know what true resistance is. They know what true struggle is. And they know that as difficult as things are now, it doesn't even remotely approach what their grandparents went through. So these are hard people. These are coal miners. These are, the farmers. These are hard people. And, I've got their shirt on, built under fire. These are good people. They're strong people. I just hope that all of Russia, because, I don't give a damn about the West anymore because it's irrelevant. I mean, I'm trying my best to change minds here, but Vladimir Putin he doesn't wake up every morning going, I wonder what the American people are thinking today. I really have to do my policy to appease their sensibilities. No, he cares about what the Russian people think. I did an interview with Ksenia Sobchak. I'm sure you know who she is. I'm not going to say she hates Russia because clearly she lives in Russia. Her father was, a close friend, but she has a mindset that basically is the new regions aren't really Russia. Therefore, Russia shouldn't die for the new regions. And I'm like, hey, Ksenia, those are Russians. They believe they're Russians. They know they're Russians. History says they're Russians. And if you're willing to give up on the people of the Donbass, Zaporizhia, and Kherson, where else are you going to give up them when the going gets tough? Are you going to give up on Kursk, Belgorod, Ryazan? Are you going to give up on Voronezh? Hell, why not?
And when I was in Starovelk, I asked them, and they told me we're Russians.
We're Russian.
They screamed 100%
at me.
They screamed it at me. They were like mad at me for even asking.
Yeah. Yes, and therefore the Russian people need to step up right now. And I know they are. I know they are. But there are people out there right now that are, in the cafes drinking their lattes and eating their nice little meals going, oh, life's hard. We had to pay 3 more cents or 3 more rubles a liter for gasoline because that made it difficult to cut out on the 18th hole. Hey, tough duty, pal.
You're making fun of my golf. Am I okay playing? I mean, really nice golf courses here. It's okay if I go on a weekend and play golf, right? You give me permission, don't you?
It's called life. It's called life. And you live your life. You know why you live your life? Because that's what they're fighting for. They're not fighting for you to suffer. They're fighting for you to live life. And they're making these sacrifices so that all Russians can live life. And because Russia's on the right side of history, America needs to wake up and understand that what these Russians are doing in the Donbass and Zaporizhia and Kherson, they're defending you from this odious ideology, this Nazi ideology that your grandfathers died trying to defeat. It's being resurrected.
And that's my final point as we end this, because I wanted to say this because it came to me earlier. It really pisses me off that the Polish government is castigating Zelensky and they're screaming at him because he's associating with Nazis who killed massacred, slaughtered 100,000 ethnic Poles. I've seen the pictures. It's horrific. But they don't hate him enough. So in other words, here's my parting words. I learned today from the reaction of the Poles who say they were going to continue to support Ukraine that their hatred for Russians supersedes their hatred for Nazis. And that's what they proved today.
100%.
Do you agree?
100%. And people need to go study what happened in Volyn. Every time the Ukrainians put up a beautiful Ukrainian female choir and you hear them sing their little Ukrainian female choir songs, you guys do know that when the Banderas went through the villages, they went building to building and they had choirs of females who would sing to drown out the cries of the family being slaughtered inside so the other villagers wouldn't panic and run. This is documented fact, people. It is. And so
evil.
These are the people. Now, they took the body of Andrei Melnik and they reburied him and buried him as a hero, and then named their units after a man who murdered tens of thousands of Jews and participated in the murder of 100,000 plus Poles.
Crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And it is, Scotty, you're the best, man. You're such a good friend. When are you coming back here? I want to hang out with you. And,
I hope to be back in September. I'm finishing up 2 documentaries, one on drone warfare, one on Chechnya. I'm going to submit them to a film festival that's in Moscow in September. And, I don't expect to win anything, but I'd like it to be shown. And if that's the case, I'll come back and participate in that film festival.
That's great. That's great. Well, if you need any help with any of that stuff, I'll do it gratis because I'll be happy to help in any way I can. You're the best. You're a good friend. You're a knowledgeable guy, and your heart's in the right place.